ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's Polsky series. Our program is titled, Why Becoming a Grantor or Volunteer is Beneficial to You. And I'm Emily Fowler, Polsky Series Director, and before we get started tonight, I'd like to request that you turn off any cell phones, pagers, or other noisy electronic devices that you might have on your person, or put them on silent or vibrate for us. Thank you. The Polsky Practical Personal Enrichment Series is underwritten for the fourth year by Norman and Elaine Polsky Family Supporting Foundation within the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation in partnership with Johnson County Community College. These programs are not being offered anywhere else, and they feature local professionals who are kind enough to share their knowledge with all of us. The college is lucky to have the beautiful Polsky Theater in which to hold these seminars, and this space hosts a variety of other programs each year. In fact, we just did the Rocky Horror Show in here last weekend. I'm sure you were all here for that as well. I want to take this opportunity to thank Norman and Elaine Polsky, who are with us tonight, for which the theater and this seminar series are named, for their generosity to our college and to organizations across Kansas City and this country. Thanks, Norman and Elaine. Many thanks also to the JCCC TV and Carlson Center production crews, as well as the horticulture program here at the college for our trees on stage tonight. And now let me take you through tonight's packet. This is for you to take home and share with your family and friends. And Norman tells me that 75% of what we hear is lost within 24 hours. So these are for you to take home and read again so you can remember what you learned here tonight. So let me take you through the contents very quickly. On the left-hand side, first in yellow is a biography of Norman Elaine Polsky, and on the back of that page is a list of the Polskys' 40-plus endowments that support organizations all over the United States and in Israel, including 3 of the organizations that are represented on tonight's panel. Secondly, a blue sheet with Norm's 10 commandments, and on the back, Norm's My Legacy to You, an overview of 5 points from Jim Stour's book, Yes, You Can Achieve Financial Independence, and 11 points that Norm feels are important for investing in mutual funds. The third sheet in purple is Norman's investment article dated April 1st of 2008, and on the back is a list of his Big 8 mutual funds. This is followed by a gold sheet showing Norm's mutual fund holdings history since 1970, and on the back of that, how safe is our stock market, which demonstrates the rate of return on stocks since 1957, over the last 50 years. This kind of long-term look at the investing ties into our discussion that will feature on our next Polsky Series panel, and that is the next sheet on the left-hand side. There's a color flyer for you. Whether you run a nonprofit organization or you're in business for yourself, you'll want to hear this panel discuss on June 4th how to build an effective board and whether an endowment or long-term investment fund is the best way for you to secure your future. And lest you think I forgot, also on the left-hand side of your packet is a green survey card, and we'd like your feedback about tonight's program, so please fill this out and hand it to an usher before you leave tonight. We're looking for 100% return on these, and I think we know all of you by first name in a small group like this, so we'll be checking at the door. Hand that to your ushers on your way out. You can also give us your email address, your mailing address if you're not already on our mailing list, and suggest topics for future seminars. And finally, a blue question and answer card. So if you have a question for one of our panelists this evening, write it on this card, and one of the ushers or staff people will come around, pick these up, and we'll use these later in the program. On the right-hand side of the packet are the materials specific to tonight's presentation, and I'd like to introduce our presenters to you right now in alphabetical order. First, Lisa Adkins is Executive Director of Youth Friends, Incorporated. Trudi Grin, MD, who is in private practice in pediatric ophthalmology and strabismus in Overland Park, Kansas, and who's also a member of the Board of Trustees of the Medical Missions Foundation, having served as co-president from 2004 to 2007 and medical director from 2002 to 2004. Next to her is Laura McKnight, Executive Director of the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation, And finally, Elaine Perilla, Executive Director of the Volunteer Center of Johnson County. And I think we'll kick tonight off with Elaine coming to the podium, so I'd like to welcome her now to start our program on how becoming a volunteer or grantor is beneficial to you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Elaine.
Thank you. I'll leave this right here. Good evening. I know you're out there. Thanks for coming tonight. Thanks to Norm and Elaine for having the event. You can all learn tonight how to get up, get out, and get busy when we're all finished. Let me get here it is. I'm Elaine Perilla with the Volunteer Center of Johnson County, and if you haven't heard of us, let me tell you a little bit about what we do there. We connect people with an opportunity to serve, and you have a booklet in your packet of some organizations, so you have no excuses when you leave here tonight. You have all the information you need to get up, get out, and get busy. We connect people with an opportunity to serve, train people on how to work with volunteers, make it possible for folks who are in the corporate sector to get their employees busy, work with youth, work with seniors, and just try to promote volunteerism throughout the community. Some stats on volunteerism. I thought you might find this kind of interesting. These are national stats as of 2007. 60.8 million people volunteer in the United States. That's 26% of our population. And it's like taking a snapshot on a daily basis. How many people do you think are out volunteering? If you look at that a little more locally, you see that that Kansas ranks 5th in the nation when it comes to volunteering. That means we're 5th in the nation for having people out in the community and volunteering. In Johnson County, we think that's about 35% of our population on a daily basis are doing something. And nationally, it's about 25%. And you see the metro area number at about 25% of the population. We think it's a little higher in Johnson County for two reasons. One, each and every one of our schools has some kind of a program for youth to be involved in service. You can, from kindergarten through a community college, get involved in service. You can, at a four-year institution anywhere around us, get involved in service. There are congressional awards in our area where folks from 14 to 24 can sign up and do projects for those 10 years and then get an award. So we think we are about 10% above the national average because of our schools. And secondly, because of our business community. In the business community across Johnson County, a lot of the employees who go to work every day demand volunteering programs. So their employers are either release time is one, or they do on weekends or evenings do some volunteering. But we think this is a very active area for volunteerism. By definition, volunteering is the opportunity to choose what you do. You're making the choice to give your time or to give your talent, and you're doing that by choice without receiving any pay. Most of us would do the informal kind of volunteering probably. You've helped your neighbor, you've worked in an area school with your children, you've worked in your church, you've helped somebody without being paid or being asked, so I would think that you are all pretty active volunteers. Some benefits of volunteering. It has been proven by studies, they never quote the source, but they always say proven by studies that it is beneficial to you and lets you live longer. And it lets you live longer because when you're doing good, you produce endorphins, and the endorphins improve your immune system, and that makes you live longer. You can meet some terrific people when you volunteer. We have all kinds of folks who volunteer together. You never know who you're going to stand next to when you're doing volunteering. You can meet your neighbor, or you can meet somebody from 3 streets away, or you could meet somebody from 3 counties away. You can learn new skills. Lots of people, when they volunteer, they want to do what they've done for a living. So if they are an accountant, they want to go somewhere and volunteer and be an accountant. Other people say, I'm an accountant all day long, I want to go play the violin. So you can use your skills that you have, or you can do something fun and have a great time. And whatever you want to do, somebody needs it done. Okay, it's a participation part. Everybody in the audience who's volunteered, show of hand. All the yes to volunteers. Yay. Are there any who have not yet chosen a place to do that? Anybody brave enough to say you'd like to, but you don't know how to get started? We, in our office, answer phone calls all the time. And the phone calls are mostly from people who have never volunteered before. And on an annual basis, that's about 15,000 people. And most of them have never volunteered before, and they're looking for a way to get started. So I thought I'd share with you this evening what type of volunteering is the most popular. As you see at the top, a cake baker. If we put an ad in the paper for a cake baker, we get between 90 and 120 calls in the first 2 hours of our day. And I think it's because you all know what a cake baker is, and it's time limited, and you know what it would look like when it's finished, and you're eager to go do that. Second most popular thing we put in the paper is bingo caller. And again, it surprises people, but it would be an hour, hour and a half. You would know what it's doing. It's kind of fun, and it's the second most popular thing that happens. If you're not quite sure what you want to do, the next call we usually get is someone who wants to work with children, and either in a play setting or in a school setting or an after-school setting, but working with children. And then the rest of these are they all come together. Building gardens, people like to work outside, and so there are lots of people every day working in gardens. I work on golf tournaments, walks and runs, active at golf holes, active passing out water, active passing out food. You can mentor a youth or an adult in our area really easily. And if you like to shop, there are always people who need to do that, and so they need some help doing that. You could certainly shop with someone on a monthly basis or a weekly basis. And if you like to drive, there are all kinds of opportunities to do that. So those are kind of the myriad of things that happen most frequently in our office. How would you find a volunteer opportunity? You've got a packet tonight. You can visit our website, or nationally you can go to match.org and enter your zip code, and it will list for you all the places where you can volunteer. You can certainly ask your friend. The number one reason that people volunteer is that they are asked. The number one person that they ask is usually a neighbor or a friend who is volunteering. So you could buddy up and go with someone and go volunteer and learn to do it for the first time. You can call a nonprofit organization that you know, or work in a school near you, or just look around. There are all kinds of places where you can go do that. So how would you get started? Select a volunteer opportunity very carefully. When you decide to volunteer, it's not a lifelong commitment, and you get to choose where you're going. You can find an opportunity in your neighborhood. You can find an opportunity in the community, but it should be something you're passionate about. And sometimes deciding what you're passionate about and you care about is hardest to do. But once you think that you maybe want to make a difference in the environment, or maybe you want to make a difference in education, maybe you want to make your difference working with seniors, whatever that is, decide what you're passionate about first, because that will help you make that commitment. Then make sure it fits your schedule. Don't overcommit. The number one thing that volunteers do, they think they can volunteer 6 or 8 hours a day, and they can do that 3 days a week, and they can do that forever. Don't overcommit your time, and pick 1 or 2 or 3 things that you really care about. The average volunteer volunteers in 3 places at a time for about a year, and they do about 5 hours a week. So on the national average, that's the number. Select an opportunity that you think is fun. If you think cake baking is fun, you could go do that. If you think working with children is fun, sign up to do that. Pick something that really interests you, because that will help you stay involved. And what do you do after you've decided where to go to volunteer? What might happen to you if you call an organization and say, "Hi, I want to volunteer"? You'll call any organization and ask to speak to either their volunteer coordinator or their volunteer manager or their director, and they will be able to tell you if they have volunteer opportunities available and what they are and what that schedule might be. They will ask you probably to come and meet with them prior to your starting your volunteer opportunity, so you could select a time to meet with them, and then when you're meeting with them, select a time to volunteer that fits your schedule. They will then ask you to go through some training, probably, on answering a phone, on doing almost anything. They'll ask you for some training. So log some time or apply for some time to do the training piece. And then remember that you get to choose what you do. It's not like going to work every day. You can choose your hours, you can choose your location, you can choose kinds of work that you want to do. And how would you build our community? I say this all the time, and I know that grammatically it's not correct, but if there is something you can do, somebody needs it done. And what usually keeps people from volunteering is the fear of commitment, the fear that they're going to ask you to do something you don't know how to do, and that once you get there, they're never going to let you leave. None of those 3 things are real. That's not how it usually works. So pick something that you can do and enjoy doing, and somewhere in this community, somebody needs it done. And you have some tools in your packet tonight, or you can call any of us when this is over to help you find that place where somebody needs it done. If you like to fix bicycles, we can help you find a place to do that. If what you like to do is to read books to somebody, we can help you to find a place to do that. Whatever it is that you think you can do that will contribute, there's somebody in this community that needs it done. And remember that you choose where it is you want to go and what it is you want to do. And so how many of you have gone to volunteer because somebody asked you to do that? Ooh. Most of you went to volunteer and you already knew where you were going to go. Well, I hope that when you leave here this evening, you just get up, get out, and get busy and find some wonderful opportunities volunteering in our community. Thank you for what you do and what you will do in the future.
It's a real pleasure to be here with you this evening. I'm Lisa Adkins with Youth Friends, and I'm going to talk to you about Youth Friends and its school-based mentoring. I'm also going to talk to you about our newest effort, Uplink, which is all about math, engineering, technology, and science, and then the opportunity and the importance of volunteers, as well as the impact the Norman and Elaine Polsky Endowment has made to Youth Friends as an organization. Youth Friends is school-based mentoring. The typical Youth Friends school-based mentor volunteers with a student 1 hour a week, 1-to-1, for a school year's duration in one of 40 local school districts. At Youth Friends, we're all about the return on investment, and I think that really stems from our founding donor, Ray Chambers, who is an East Coast-based philanthropist who made his fortune on Wall Street. Wouldn't that be nice? Ray is one of those people who approaches charitable giving as an investor and not as simply a funder, and he absolutely walks the talk. Ray believed that his life was completely transformed by several mentors when he was a young person. And as a result of that, he's never forgotten the people who mentored him when he literally grew up in the projects in Newark, New Jersey. So Ray himself is a mentor. He's mentored many young people throughout his life, and he's contributed much money to mentoring causes and organizations throughout the nation, as well as other kinds of charitable causes. But almost exclusively, he's made his charitable donations on the East Coast, almost exclusively in New York and in New Jersey. But Ray had a huge frustration around mentoring. And that was, he felt not enough children were being served in high-quality mentoring programs. Ray wanted two things. He wanted quality and he wanted scalability. And he found that in small mentoring programs, children were having a great mentoring experience, but it was only a small number of children that were being served. And then he found that in large programs that were actually achieving some kind of scale, that the quality of the mentoring experience for the child and the volunteer was often lacking. And so he wanted both, and he was willing to invest $500,000 in Kansas City, actually a gift he made to the Community Foundation, because he was convinced that in Kansas City we could do better. On both of those things, and that we could deliver both mentoring in a way that would be high quality and scalable. Well, Youth Friends was launched in Greater Kansas City 13 years ago, and it began in 6 local school districts, and that first year we placed several hundred volunteers. We are now in our 13th year of Youth Friends, and we now partner with 100 school districts across Kansas and Missouri. 40 of those are in Greater Kansas City, and this school year there are 4,400 Youth Friends mentors that go into a local school, either one-to-one or in a small group mentoring setting, and as a result of that, 20,000 local youth this year will have a Youth Friends volunteer in their life on a weekly basis. Ray Chambers has been back to Kansas City just one time. It was 3 years ago for our 10th anniversary. And he said that the return on his investment had been infinity. And I suppose you can't get much better than that. And I think that Youth Friends really did deliver for Mr. Chambers. He wanted quality and scalability, and we gave him replicability too, since it's now spread to 100 school districts. And we have even since that time created a generic version of Youth Friends that we call Mentor Map, that actually some part of Youth Friends tools, training, technology, school-based mentoring system has been made available to school districts, nonprofits, churches, other kinds of organizations in 40 states, Bermuda, and Canada. And that's all terrific, but when it really comes down to what return on investment means, it's really the results. It's the experience for the volunteer and, most importantly, for the young person. But we couldn't do what we do without the volunteer mentors. It's about research and evaluation, and we do plenty of both. And research about mentoring generally, but Youth Friends specifically, concludes that Youth Friends, young people who have Youth Friends mentors in their lives are more successful. They're more successful in school, and they're more successful in life. They have higher aspirations for the future. They have improved academics, improved attendance in school, and they're more connected to both their school and their community, which is really critical. In terms of the volunteers, outcomes for young people in mentoring relationships are directly tied to the longevity of the match. So actually, a mentor and a mentee that terminate early, it can actually be detrimental to a young person. You're looking for at least 6 months of weekly meetings, but the more the better. And what we're so proud about Youth Friends, and I think it speaks to the volunteer experience and what we call the power of just 1 hour a week, is that in a typical year, about 96 to 97% of all those volunteers complete their commitment. And 100, that percentage of them make it through a school year, and on a given year, about 2/3 come back for an additional year of service. This last school year, we recognized 1,000 Youth Friends locally that had been mentoring 5 years or longer with an area young person. And so those are some of the things that we talk about when we mean return on investment. In terms of what it means to be a volunteer and a Youth Friend volunteer, specifically, it is the little things that make a difference. How many of you would consider reading or movie going one of your favorite leisure time activities? Reading or movie going? How many of you are registered voters? Excellent. How about you belong to a place of worship? Okay, hands up if you actually attend with any regularity. All right. You read the newspaper just about daily. Those are the most common characteristics of a Youth Friends volunteer. Congratulations, you're all invited to join us. So these volunteers are great people, and they're just like us, they're just like you, and they volunteer for a number of activities, as Elaine said, on average about 3. I think the reason they can join us at Youth Friends is it's 1 hour a week, and we really designed Youth Friends school-based mentoring to overcome the common barriers as to why people don't volunteer, and especially with children. People are looking for flexibility and convenience. They're looking for a manageable amount of time. They're looking for something that's enjoyable but meaningful, and they certainly want their time well utilized. They also want training and support. As Elaine said, most importantly, people want to have comfort that they know what they're doing. And all of that was built into the design of Youth Friends, with literally hundreds of school sites in 40 school districts around the metro area, with many opportunities Monday through Friday, before school, during school, over lunch, and after school, with a choice of working with one child or a group, and anywhere along that kindergarten through 12th grade spectrum. It's really, as Elaine said, if you love to read, there's a Youth Friend for you. If you want to help coach that child who's looking to what they're going to do past high school, whether it's college or the right kind of career path, if your love is music or geography or math or science, whatever that is, there is a child or a group of children who can really benefit from the presence of another caring adult in their life. And that's all that mentoring is, a caring, consistent presence. In terms of the volunteers, I think it's really critical to know that 98% of Youth Friends say they'd recommend Youth Friends volunteering to others, and uniformly they report that they get more out of it than they give to it, and the children and teachers say the opposite. They believe they get more out of it than they get to it, so I don't think you can have much more of a win-win than that. Our newest effort is Uplink, and that is really an expansion upon Youth Friend. It's a new partnership we launched a little more than a year ago with the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, and it takes mentoring and sort of expands the possibilities with a real focus on math, engineering, technology, and science. There are opportunities for individuals to volunteer, especially if you come from that kind of background, those kinds of businesses. It truly cuts across broad business and entrepreneurship, but in particular we're looking for folks who have a background in math, engineering, technology, and science. There's opportunities to mentor, to e-mentor, which is from your computer to a student's computer at school, but the expanded opportunities including moving some of the action into business-based settings, internships for students, job shadowing opportunities, career speaking back in the classroom for 1 hour a couple times a year, and also providing summer business experiences for teachers. So K through 12 teachers can go into a business and work for 8 weeks in the summer and really take that real world relevance back into the classroom in the fall. So that's just a little bit about the uplink effort, but if you want more about that, we have a table outside, or you can go to uplinkthefuture.org and learn more. We do want to invite you to, for most of you, pick an additional volunteer activity that really meets your needs. And if you're not yet volunteering, we certainly encourage you to explore what your passion is. But if children are part of your passion, then we certainly invite you to look at Youth Friends, and you can pick up an application right outside the front door. You know, a good question would be, with 4,400 volunteer mentors, aren't you just about all full up? And the truth of the matter is, there are 75,000 school-age children in Greater Kansas City who need and want a mentor and don't yet have access to one. 75,000. And that is part of a national picture of about 15.1 million school-age children in our country that need and want a mentor and don't have access. And 75,000 is Kansas City's piece of that national pie. We talk about that as the national mentoring gap. 75,000 is the local mentoring gap. And so we truly need all the help we can get to close that mentoring gap for local youth. Our goal at Youth Friends is to increase those volunteer numbers from 4,400 to 10,000 active volunteers, and we want to do that just as soon as we can, and we're launching a number of new campaigns and strategies this fall to try to do just that, but we invite you to join us in the effort. So if you can't be a youth friend, I'll bet you're the kind of connected people that know somebody who could be, and so we encourage you to help us in that effort. And then finally, the Polsky Endowment has been really important to Youth Friends, and I want to talk about the impact of that. 7 years ago, we had no endowment. That would have been zero. And last year, after 7 years and 2 endowment challenges from Norman and Elaine, our endowment has grown to just about $500,000. And that has meant a lot to our organization, when in a typical year, our budget size was just a little about double that. For most of our existence. And so what that endowment of $500,000 has meant to us is probably very similar to what your retirement account means to you. It has provided our organization with stability. I think it's provided it with real credibility that an organization of our size could build an endowment like that. And it's also been a huge safety net. We have been tempted over the years to crack into that, into the interest earnings, but we've never yet done that, and that's something that Norman encourages us to do, is to let that grow and to not touch it unless we absolutely need it. But it's wonderful to know that it's there if we do, and I just think it's been incredibly important to us. When we think about Norman and Elaine, you know, they are two people who created great wealth for themselves, but I know they'd be the first to tell us that wealth does not necessarily equate to living a rich, satisfying life. It's both what we do with our money and our time that counts. And it's really interesting. A survey was done comparing people who were on the Forbes 400 list of richest Americans and their life satisfaction. And they looked at a scale of 1 to 7. 7 means I'm completely satisfied with all aspects of my life, and 1 means not at all satisfied. And they found that the top 400 on Forbes' richest list of Americans averaged a 5.8 on that scale. So, you know, they're pretty satisfied, 5.8 out of 7. But that was exactly the same rating that the Inuit people in Greenland, which is Greenland's Native Americans, they also were at a 5.8. And so were the cattle herding Maasai of Kenya, who live in dung huts with no electricity or running water. So they all were at an equal steady 5.8. And I think that really points out that money doesn't buy happiness. Of course, we know that sometimes it can help, but really it doesn't buy happiness. You know, it's what we do with our money and our time. And in terms of Norman's advice about investing in mutual funds, because it's all about the diversification, I think if diversifying our money equals financial success, then diversifying what we do with our time and our life really equals life success. So it's not just our work and not just our families, but it's the diversification into volunteerism that really makes a difference. And so we are really grateful to Norman and Elaine for what they've done. We're grateful to many of our volunteers and partners that I see in the audience. And we encourage you to get involved. Thanks so much.
My PowerPoint's a little bit complicated, so we have to pull it up from the computer. I'd like to start off by thanking Norman for inviting me to participate in this series, and both Norman and Elaine have been really role models for me and countless of others in their lifetime of volunteerism and philanthropy, so I'd like to thank them for allowing me to participate and share my experiences. The topic and my discussion here in volunteerism is pretty far removed from what the volunteers are doing here in the community. I'm talking more about global volunteering versus local, and that's what Medical Missions Foundation is all about. I'm going to start out by telling you a little bit of background information about myself and how I became involved with this organization. First of all, I'm a physician. I'm a pediatric ophthalmologist, and I have fellowship training in that particular area. For those of you who don't know what a pediatric ophthalmologist does, I treat eye diseases of children, and I do eye surgery, and I've been in private practice for over 20 years, and I'm in practice in Overland Park, Kansas. I'm married to an ophthalmologist who's here in the audience, Milton, and he takes care of adults. He's in a private practice in Olathe, Kansas. I have 3 children, and all of my children have participated in medical missions. My involvement with Medical Missions Foundation began about 7 years ago when I was in the hallway of Overland Park Regional Hospital, and I was approached by Dr. Tony Rosella, who's also here in the audience, and he said, "Oh, our group is going to Romania, and we need a pediatric ophthalmologist," and he showed me a very long list of children that were in need of eye surgery, the type of surgery that I do, and he asked me if I would like to go. And I said, well, I'm going to be on the continent. I happened to be doing a sabbatical at that time in Switzerland, and I said I would join him. And little did I know how much that experience was going to change my life. I agreed to go, I went, and it was a life-changing experience for me. I did a lot of surgery. I did 35 or 40 cases, saw several hundred patients. I worked very hard, and like so many others who become involved with medical mission trips, I knew I was hooked, and it was just the beginning of a new phase of my life. Since that time, I participated in 9 other medical mission trips, and in addition, much to my surprise, and also something I thought I would never do, I became involved in many aspects of volunteerism. I am involved in the board of trustees for Medical Missions Foundation. I've been on the board for 7 years. I served as board president for 2.5 years. I directed a medical mission trip to Vietnam. I'm planning another one to the Philippines. I've chaired a major fundraiser. Never thought I would do that. I even asked for donations and for money. I've told board members, oh, I can't do that, and Judy Overton's my witness. I do it. So the list goes on. So my volunteer experiences have evolved, and I've really loved every minute of it, and it has been life-enriching. But really what keeps me involved and keeps me going is the passion for the work that I do on these medical trips. I know that all of the work that I do is the means to the end of what kind of work I do on these medical trips. For me, when you take away insurance, you take away money factor, and you take away the paperwork, what's left for the work on these trips for me is really pure medicine and pure surgery. And that's really what I train to do. And it's very, very rewarding. And the thing that also is very impressive to me is the desperation that I see with the patients that are there on these medical trips. The patients, I've never seen such desperation, and I also have never experienced such gratitude. So it is truly rewarding. I'm going to talk a little bit about the organization. Medical Missions Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit. It is non-sectarian, and our mission statement is to provide medical and surgical care to indigent people of underdeveloped countries. It was founded in 1996 by Drs. Tony and Luz Rosella, who are here in the audience, and they are both pathologists, and it was their dream to develop an organization where they could provide medical care initially to the Philippines, and then the organization grew and evolved, and they went on many other trips, and it's become the organization that it is largely because of their vision and because of their hard work. So I applaud Drs. Tony and Luz Rosella. The organization is successful because of the volunteers. We have a very small support staff. We have 2 full-time employees. We have an executive director, Jane Savage, who is here, and a full-time administrative assistant. But our volunteers, who spend countless hours in the office, outside of the office, at the warehouse, these are the people that make things happen for this organization. They keep our overhead low and our expenses low. And for the trips that we go on, most of the participants, they pay their own travel expenses. They're giving up their vacation. They pay the full ride for the trip. And there are some that cannot afford to pay it, and they receive a travel grant of 50%. The budgets for the trips are tight. At our board meetings, it is tough to get a budget passed. Everything is scrutinized. We want to make sure that every dollar is spent appropriately, and so we spend the least amount of money. On the average, an average trip may have 30 or 40 volunteers, and for these particular trips, our average budget runs somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000. And that's an amazingly low amount of money for the work that is done, for the number of meds and supplies that are needed to do several hundred surgeries and see several hundred patients. But we are able to do it on a small budget because of a large number of donations and because of the volunteer efforts. We are also supported by fundraising within the organization itself. We have 2 major fundraisers, Art for the Children and the Jeff Montgomery Golf Classic, that raises a lot of money for our organization. And we are also supported by the Polsky Family Supporting Foundation. As our organization grew, we recognized the need to have a long-term and sustainable financial situation. And we knew that we couldn't always count on our fundraisers to finance our trips or our day-to-day operations. So we were very fortunate to be a recipient of the endowment with the Polsky Family Supporting Foundation. And I'm very happy to report that with Norman's guidance and the help of our finance committee, our fund has grown 60% in the past 3 years. According to our mission statement, our primary commitment is to provide surgical and medical care for children. We do also take care of adults, but our primary goal is children, to enhance each child's opportunity for a better life. This is made possible through the volunteer efforts of many individuals on these trips. We utilize surgeons and primary care physicians. We have clinics. We conduct lots of different types of surgeries. In some of these slides, you may recognize some of the surgeons in the trips. Most of the physicians that participate are local. Dr. Joe Canova is in the upper left-hand corner, Dr. Phil Gutek. The previous slide, we had Dr. Doug Cusick, Dr. Frank Caranda, and many of these physicians go over and over again. They may do 1 or 2 trips a year. My husband has also gone on a trip or 2, and I've been on several. We also have primary care physicians. These are just pictures of various trips and our doctors and nurses who have volunteered. And we also utilize primary care physicians, pediatricians, emergency room physicians, family practitioners. They all participate. And again, most of these doctors are local. Our secondary commitment is to ensure that the ongoing medical care is kept going in the various locations that we work at by teaching the local health providers and by providing supplies in the areas that we serve. I feel that the teaching is an extremely rewarding part of our missions. It allows us to leave behind something with the doctors and the nurses that we work with so that they can do the same type of work or similar work when we leave. And over the years, the teaching has occurred in many formats. Sometimes it's physician to physician, sometimes lectures are given, sometimes we have nurses that go to schools. So we've had a nurse that has worked extensively with burn victims and has lectured on burn prevention techniques. So there are a lot of different things that we try to teach at the various missions. And here is another thing that we like to do. This looks like a big mess here with all of these slides, all of this suitcases of medical equipment, but that's what it's like. We have to get this medication, the supplies over somehow, and most of us bring an extra suitcase filled with as many supplies as we can, and sometimes we ship items in advance. We pack all of our own supplies. We try to be totally self-sufficient. We come with our own suture, our own instruments, our packs that we need for the surgeries, medications, and even though this may look very disorganized, there is an organization system to that. So these are in rooms off of the hospital, so we know where we have our suture and our supplies and all the things we need to conduct a clinic or to do a surgery. Sometimes we end up donating large items. We may donate anesthesia machines, laparoscopic equipment, larger supplies. We've donated a ventilator to one particular hospital that did not have a ventilator. And this all occurred because we happened to go through a nursery and we saw a nurse ventilating a baby by hand. They had a bag and they were ventilating this baby 24/7 by hand without a ventilator. When we came back to our board, we said, we have got to get a ventilator to this hospital, and our board agreed to do that, and that donation was made, and happily they have received that piece of equipment. Since 1996, thousands of children and adults have been treated through the medical care and the surgical care that we provide, and I think it's really important for you to understand that our goal is that wherever we go, we want to provide virtually the same standard, the excellent standard of care, the surgical care and the medical care that we do in the United States. So when we come, we bring a team. We bring a team of physicians that are operating surgeons, an anesthesiologist, a nurse anesthetist, operating room nurses, recovery room nurses. They're all specialized in their areas. We're not throwing someone in that doesn't know how to, an assistant, a physician in a surgery. We want people that can provide good quality care to the patients that we're taking care of. And that also means bringing the appropriate medications and supplies. Most of the surgeries that we do not require a lot of long-term follow-up because we don't want to leave people behind that need extensive follow-up. We're not doing heart transplants or bypass surgery, that type of surgery. We're doing surgeries that are a little bit more quick and that will not have difficult follow-up. A lot of cleft lip and palate repairs have been done by some of the plastic surgeons and ear, nose, and throat doctors that participate in the medical missions. We have seen a lot of children with really bad burns in certain countries, in Romania in particular. They have a lot of outdoor stoves and the kids get boiling water on them and they end up with terrible burn scars simply because they don't know how to take care of them, and they end up much worse than what we previously would have thought that they should have or that we see in the United States. So a lot of reconstructive surgery is done or scar revision is done. I do a lot of the eye surgery on children that is involving eye muscle disorders or lid surgery, and these are all examples of children that I've taken care of on medical mission trips that have severe crossing. Most of these children were not taken care of at the appropriate time. Most of them were much older when they had their surgeries, where in the United States these kids would have surgery before a year of age. Norm said he wanted me to show some pre and post photos when we were talking about this series. So this slide is for you, Norman. These are all children that were operated on various medical mission trips. The slide at the top is the before, and the slide at the bottom is the same child after. You probably key in on the red eye immediately, but the eyes are very red because it's only been 1 day since their surgery, so they're not going to be all clear from the redness. But you can see the big difference. It's really a dramatic improvement for them, and it certainly changes their quality of life, and it changes how other people react to them, and it changes their visual experience as well. And the child on the bottom happens to be a little boy who had severe drooping of the lid, and he had a surgical repair, and that's 1 day after his surgery. There are a number of countries that our organization goes to or has gone to, and There are 10 different countries that you can see listed. We've performed 40 successful mission trips over the past 12 years, and each of the countries that we go to is unique and interesting in its own way, and every trip is different. Having gone on 10 different trips, I can tell you there's not one that's really been like the other. The people are different, and it really is a wonderful way to experience a culture and the people of that nation firsthand. And I'm just going to show you just some quick slides, the pictures of various countries. These are just some scenes from Romania, and yes, there are a lot of people that still get around in the horse and cart, believe it or not. And I was shocked when I first saw that, but it's still there. A lot of people don't have cars, and that's how they get around. And these are scenes from Vietnam, just more travel scenes, just so you get a little feeling of what it's like. It was a very interesting place. This is from the Philippines, the island of Bohol, where I've been to twice. A beautiful island, beautiful people, wonderful to work with. Every country has a different flavor in terms of their people, and the Filipino people I especially like working with. They're wonderful. And these are scenes from Guatemala. You can see the slide in the upper left-hand corner is a typical clinic scene where there are just throngs of people waiting to be seen, and they may wait all day. They'll get there at 6 or 7 in the morning, and some of them may not be seen that day, and they'll wait till the next day. And these are a few slides from Panama. I just saw some nice pictures of the kids and some interesting photos there, so I wanted to share that with you. For this organization, it's the volunteers that make it all happen. It's amazing how many volunteers are involved in a trip that we go on. A lot of the work is done beforehand. The trip is the pinnacle of the experience, but an amazing amount of work occurs before in order to have a trip, a medical mission trip. Usually there are two key people that organize the trip, a medical director and a clinical coordinator, and they spend countless hours organizing, assembling a team, filling out the paperwork for the other country. They make the travel arrangements, work on bargaining to get the supplies at the least expensive rate, and they get their team together and they get those volunteers to do all of that, the packing and more packing and more packing and sending and shipping supplies. So the list goes on. Then it all happens. We go there, and that's when we do our work. But it doesn't happen. The supreme effort doesn't happen unless we organize in advance. And it really is volunteerism at its best. The volunteers for the mission trips, it's a unique volunteer experience, and it's a unique group of volunteers because most of the opportunities for actually volunteering on these medical trips, they require special medical training and specialized skills. We utilize physicians of various types, different types of surgeons, plastic surgeons, ear, nose, and throat. The type of doctors that we use depends on what the needs are of the country that we go to. We utilize a wide variety of nurses, and we try to match the nurses' volunteer positions with their skill. As I mentioned before, we're using clinical nurses in clinics. We use operating room nurses in the operating rooms. So when I go, I like to have a nurse that has experience working with eyes. I don't want just any scrub nurse. I want somebody who knows how to work with eyes because it's a whole different set of problems, and the ear, nose, and throat doctor likes the same type of situation. We also utilize different ancillary medical volunteers for different trips depending on their needs. We've used dental hygienists, audiologists, pharmacists, physical therapists, again, depending on what the needs of that particular country are. The non-medical volunteers can be very crucial to the trips, especially biomedical engineers. We're often going to a country where the voltage and the current is different. We've had many, many blowouts of fuses and needing to hunt for a fuse, and if we have the proper biomedical people there, they can help us work through those problems. So they're very important in making sure all of our equipment is running properly. We utilize data entry people so that we can keep statistics and keep track of the patients that we're working on. And we often have Cerner volunteers. We have a partnership with First Hand Foundation, and they often send their volunteers on our medical trips, and they participate. And the gentleman in the upper left-hand corner, Mark Shields, has been on a number of trips, and he's a Cerner volunteer. We have some volunteers that will go and spend the entire week and all they do is instrument sterilization. We utilize translators when it's appropriate. Sometimes we have public relations individuals that accompany us. Elizabeth Alex has gone on a number of trips. Nancy Bessa, who's a public relations specialist, she has helped document the stories, and she's also gone on a number of trips. And Judy Overton, she has been involved with the organization since its inception, and she has been on a number of trips and serving in the volunteer capacity. The lay volunteers' opportunities are limited. A lot of people want to go on a medical mission trip, and they say, oh, I want to go and I want to help. But the truth of the matter is, there are only a small number of positions that are available for anybody, and we like to utilize essential team members, and then occasionally we will take lay volunteers along. If they have a position or a skill that we can utilize, we will bring them along. But a lot of times, the way we feel about lay volunteers going on a trip is we feel that they have to earn that position on a trip. And they have to do a lot of the work in advance, like the rest of us. And people can't just call up to the foundation and say, oh, I want to go on a medical mission trip. Well, you got to work for it. You got to spend your time volunteering and work on the fundraisers and work in the warehouse to really earn that position. But there are a lot of local volunteer opportunities we always need help with. We do our fundraising through our Art for the Children and the Golf Classic. There is some assisting done in the office. The warehouse always needs volunteers. And the people that go on the trips, they're there for our, quote, warehouse parties, where we get a team of people together and we pack and we organize our supplies and our meds, and it's really a nice way to meet people. We also ask our volunteers to collect medications and supplies for our trips. I know our other speakers have discussed the values of volunteering, and you've heard a little bit about that. I think probably the biggest, the most beneficial thing that I've found is meeting and working with a diverse range of individuals on these trips, and also outside of the trips. The medical experience is certainly life enriching, but it's the individuals and the people that I've met that make the experience great for me. I've really met an amazing number of people, and a lot of these individuals have taught me a great deal about volunteerism, and they've been mentors for me. And each of these individuals themselves has contributed a great deal of time and their skills and their talents to make the organization a success. And as it's been mentioned before, you will receive much more than you will ever give when you participate in any type of volunteer experience that you're passionate about. And I know I might be over time, but I just have to tell you about the latest and the most recent medical mission experience, because it is such an amazing story. It is really a true story of a group of volunteers who have really made a difference in how it's impacted a community and a large group of individuals. There were two medical missions volunteers, Abigail Hayo and Dr. Tammy Neblock-Byrne, who went to Africa, Mali, Africa, this past February, just 2 months ago, and they went with another organization, World Outreach Foundation. They were conducting a medical trip, and our volunteers went to see if this would be a location that we could do a medical mission in the future. It was kind of a scouting trip. So they went along, and during the course of the clinics, they encountered Bua, the little boy who you see with the two parents on the right, who had an enormous, enormous tumor on his face, which had been present for 3 years. Dr. Neblock examined this child. I'm going to try and make the story short, and so that because I know we're getting out of time. But she examined this child and found that this tumor was really encroaching on his airway. Didn't have a lot longer. This child was still eating, walking around, played the harmonica even with this tumor. And it really, I know the pictures are really grotesque, but this is real, and this is what this child had. So they knew that we had to do something. When they came back, they immediately brought this story back to our board. It didn't take very long. We said, oh, we'll fund this, no problem. And what happened and snowballed to bring this child to the United States and get him treatment is just an amazing story of volunteerism, of the difference that people can make and the generosity of many individuals that want to help. These individuals contacted Congressman Moore. And here's another picture of him here in the United States. And Congressman Moore, he facilitated the visa and the passport situation. And we're talking February, okay? Think about how long it takes if you want to get a passport. They got a passport from him from Mali so that he could come to the United States. The volunteers arranged to get a team of doctors together to take care of this child. And this includes head and neck, reconstruction, anesthesia, neurology, neurosurgery, pediatrics, all of these physicians from KU Med, and many of these doctors had been on medical missions in the past. And they all volunteered their services pro bono. We're not talking about an easy case either. The First Hand Foundation, who we partnered with in the past, and the Overland Park Rotary, they stepped up and they provided funding to help with the expenses for hospitalization. KU Med offered to provide the services at an extremely discounted rate. Volunteers across Kansas City, they came through with donations, meals. They opened up their hearts for this little child, Bua, and then all of a sudden the translators kind of came out of the woodwork. We found that there were a number of individuals in the Kansas City area who could speak the language Bamanan, I think that's the way it's called, and they happened to have lived in Mali in the past. One was a Peace Corps worker, there were others that had served as missionaries, and they were fluent in the language. So when this child came with his father, we had translators. So again, the effect snowballed. Well, what happened? It went to KU Med. Here we have one of the pediatricians who took care of him, and he had his exams, CTs, MRIs. They formulated a plan for how to treat this child. Surgery was done 2 weeks ago at KU Med with this team of doctors. This is like Medical Incredible, which you see on TV, and this is right here in Kansas City. Surgery took 23 hours. It was an exhausting experience. I've spoken to some of the doctors who participated, and they all felt that this was probably the most difficult case that they had ever done because they don't see things that are this advanced. This particular tumor is a benign tumor, and it had been growing for 3 years. For those of you who want to know what kind it is, it's an ossifying fibroma. It's a type of tumor that is made of bony tissue. And they constructed a model so that they could help to reconstruct his bony tissue. They took grafts from various bones in his body, and here you can see he has undergone surgery, and here he is right after surgery. And it's amazing that they could do this. This was a supreme effort on the part of many individuals, and here he is, like I said, this is right after surgery, and I didn't even think he had a mouth when I looked at those pictures from beforehand. So they really did excellent work, and yesterday he was discharged from the hospital. He'll be here probably for another 3 or 4 weeks, and he is eating, he's talking, and he's home, and we'll be back in Mali in a few weeks. So I think this is a very inspirational story, kind of the story of the village in Kansas City that made this happen for this little boy, and this is just another little miracle in changing lives. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
Before Laura steps up, if you have questions, just pass them to an aisle and somebody will come by and pick them up, okay? Thank you.
After all these very inspiring stories, I think it's important to reflect a moment on why all of this is so important. And we've heard a lot about people giving of their time. And as you know, there's also another way to give, and that is to write checks. That works too. But I do think all of this, whether you're giving time or money to your favorite cause, it's important to remember why that is. Now, certainly when you are making a charitable contribution, we are all fond of the income tax deduction that we receive for that contribution. But as my tax professor always reminded us in law school, you don't give away $1 to save 50 cents. You have to have a true charitable intention if you are going to get any benefit out of your giving. So I thought I would share with you one of my favorite quotes, which is a statement by Peter Drucker, who reflected that Virtually every important improvement in the quality of American life has its roots in the nonprofit sector, from the abolition of slavery, child labor, and racial discrimination to advances in medicine, education, and technology. That is important. That's very insightful, that if it weren't for these organizations that we've heard about tonight and all of the other organizations that are in Elaine's wonderful pamphlet here that are offering volunteer opportunities, we would not have the quality of life in Kansas City or in this country that we do today. Does this number surprise you, that almost $300 billion is given in the United States every year? The number that usually surprises most people is that 75% of that giving is actually from individuals. I think often when we think about charitable giving, we're thinking, gosh, that must be the big companies or the big foundations that are giving the money. That's really not the case. In fact, if you add to that 75% coming from individuals, you add the portion that is given in bequests or estate gifts, you're actually up to about 87%. That means that the individual givers in the United States are quite generous. Now, here are just a couple of brief stories about the generosity that exists in our community. About actually almost exactly 30 years ago, a group of community leaders passed a hat to collect $219.13 to form the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation. These folks formed this, and I'll show you their pictures. They formed this foundation because they firmly believe that philanthropy and giving back is the responsibility and the opportunity of not just a few very wealthy individuals, but it is the responsibility of everyone. Whether you are giving $25, $25,000, $25 million, it all counts. It can all make a difference. This picture here is a charity giving card that has become very popular for people to give for a birthday present or a client gift. Has anyone ever received a note for your birthday from a friend who said, "For your birthday, I gave to my favorite organization"? And you think, well, that was nice, but that wasn't my favorite organization. So this card is designed at even $25, $50, $100 levels to allow people to pass along the gift of giving. Here are just a few examples of what your dollar can really do if you invest it wisely in a charitable cause, and especially if you couple that with the gift of time. Has anyone seen the Back in the Swing cards? Has anyone purchased one of those cards? We see a few hands. I see Bob Ranier's hand going up. Bob is on our board. The Back in the Swing card was the vision of one woman, Barbara Unell, who sincerely wanted to create in Kansas City opportunities for cancer survivors to get treatment and a treatment plan following the end of chemotherapy, which amazingly is not all that available. She's done this $25 at a time, along with some nice sponsorships, selling these $25 cards that allow you to get a discount at 900 different stores, often 20% discount, for 5 days in October during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So this is an example of the vision of one person. She has raised over $1.5 million in the last 6 years. So this is possible if you have a vision, you have something in the community you would like to change. You can do that even $25 at a time. This is a woman named Helen Nelson, and she is someone who has let us share her story. It's nice when people let you share their stories instead of staying confidential, because we all can learn so much from others. Helen Nelson left her entire estate to Kansas City to be invested for whatever Kansas City needed, particularly life sciences. She had a son who passed away, predeceased her from a brain tumor, and it was very important for her to continue medical research in Kansas City, and she created a wonderful estate gift. So the range between the $25 Back in the Swing card to estate gifts, all of that and everything in between makes a big difference. We have to ask ourselves, what does our region's future hold, and how can we, whether through volunteering or through charitable giving, how can each of us make a difference? We've seen that the returns back to us are significant. You get significant joy out of giving, but you're also investing in the future of others. You're investing in giving someone a quality of life that they might not otherwise have. This picture shows two students. One of the studies that we've been working on demonstrates that the future of our region is going to be highly dependent on an educated workforce. That's going to be tough for us to do if we don't have a really solid pre-kindergarten through postgraduate education program that trains workers to work in the knowledge economy. Who are going to be those doctors of the future who can go on the medical missions? Who are the mentors that can participate in Youth Friends? All of this is very important. Our whole world is moving to a knowledge economy, and it's important for Kansas City to participate in that for all of our sakes. So one of the trends that we're seeing are people investing in education. I'm sure that's something that you've seen as well. I think I'm the last speaker, and I think we now turn it over back to Emily. Is that right? But thank you very much. And Norman, thank you, and Elaine, for the opportunity to be with you tonight.
Thanks to all of our speakers tonight. We do have a couple of questions. Are there any others out there that haven't been handed in yet? No? That's how thorough these ladies are. They've told you everything you need to know. I do have a couple here, though. One for Elaine. How did you get involved in volunteering when you first started out?
Oh, my goodness. Probably like everybody else, you start when you're a child. You kind of do something for your neighbor or you help a friend. I started at the Volunteer Center completely by accident. I didn't know there was a volunteer center, and somebody offered me a challenge, and the challenge was, we can pay you for 2 weeks, do you want a job? And that was 10 years ago.
Sounds great. Another question here for Laura, and it is, can you explain what a donor-advised fund is and the benefits of having one with the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation?
A donor-advised fund is a wonderful little tool. How many of you had tax deductions for charitable gifts on your tax return that you just filed? How many of you had a hard time finding all those receipts? Well, what a donor-advised fund can do is allow you to consolidate all of your giving so that you can make a single gift into a fund, take the tax deduction immediately for that year, and then decide later or now how you'd like to spend that. My husband and I have really enjoyed having our fund. He loves the fact that we've got one deduction he can give the accountant, and I love the fact that I can spend that money on any charity of my choice at any time, online or just telling my office in person I'd like a check. So it's a really neat tax-savvy tool to conduct all of your giving, and you can actually start those with really any amount of money. We have a very low minimum fee for all of the services that's $21 a month. So for $21 a month, you too can have your own personal family foundation with one piece of paper.
That's a great idea. And, you know, I had some friends who got married late in life and set up a fund with the foundation with contributions from the guests at their wedding, rather than get another blender or toaster, of which they already had 3 or 4. So one other way to do that. Lisa, I have a question here about some of the kids that are mentored through Youth Friends. What would you say the average age is of kids that get involved in the program?
Well, what's really interesting, it truly does span K through 12. And I would say the majority of volunteers are placed in elementary school. That's where they start. And I really think that's because the structure of elementary school is a little more forgiving to get those relationships started. But then in other school districts, you can get matched with an 11th or 12th grader. I mean, so that it really is a broad opportunity. And the other point I think that's important is that Youth Friends school-based mentoring is open to all kids. And it sometimes surprises people that all 6 public school districts in Johnson County are Youth Friends partners. Blue Valley, Shawnee Mission, and everything from virtually every school district in the urban core into the Northland. And I mean, it goes totally across the community. And Youth Friends certainly is for students who have more challenge in life. It can also be for just the typical kid. It can be for the accelerated kid. For those who maybe have some kind of struggle, there are just an array of opportunities. So much like the point Elaine made, if you have a skill, a gift, a passion, and you have an hour to share and you want to do that with a child, we can match you with the right student or students really anywhere from ages 5 to 18 in a really meaningful way to both you and the school and the student.
That's wonderful. One other follow-up question to that. People were saying, there's somebody here that says they've long been a supporter of the Shawnee Mission School District, and they want to know if they could request a school and go there and be a mentor.
That's the other beauty, great flexibility. And part of the formation of Youth Friends was to make it convenient to you. So you get to choose the school district you want to participate in, and now 40 to choose from. Hundreds and hundreds of school sites from K to 12, so you can choose the grade level or age range. You can choose the activity, the day, the time of the week. Sometimes if you're very specific, you need to be a little more flexible. If you only have availability 11 a.m. on Tuesdays, you might not get everything you want, but we can certainly get you the time you want. So there's a lot of variables, but there's a wide range of volunteer choice and flexibility in Youth Friends.
Great. For Dr. Grin, somebody wants to know, is there going to be a follow-up plastic surgery with the boy from Mali? Is he going to have
Well,
other
amazingly,
procedures?
the doctors did remove all of the tumor, and he's all stretched out, and his cheek is enlarged because the tumor had stretched the muscle tissue and all the soft tissue underneath the skin. But they expect him to really make a full recovery. I mean, he's eating fine, he's moving his mouth really well, his swallowing is good. They think there may be one additional, maybe two minor procedures, but they were really able to remove all of the tumor, and they expect his prognosis is very good.
That's just miraculous, isn't it? It's amazing. One more for Laura McKnight. Can you address the new donors called giving groups, and are there some here in Kansas City?
Yes, one of the most interesting trends are giving groups or giving circles, where a group of people gets together and says, hey, we have a cause we'd really like to support, or we'd like to support a cause, we just don't know what it is yet. We want to figure that out together. And they get together on a formal or informal basis, each toss in their $10 or $50 or $100 or whatever it may be, and then they meet to decide how they're going to co-invest that money in a result in an organization like Youth Friends or Medical Missions or the Volunteer Center or any of the other organizations that they're interested in. That's become really popular, and it's terrific because it shows that you can combine your dollar with someone else's dollar and have an even bigger impact and have a lot of fun doing it.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like an investment club, but in your
Exactly,
community.
but it's charitable investments. We have several that have been established, yes.
Wonderful. Well, I have the last question here is for Norman and Elaine, and I'm not sure how we're going to do this. I might have to have Norman come up here and answer this for us. But Norman, Elaine, the question is, you've embraced so many causes. What criteria do you use when you decide who to fund? And I'll try to repeat Norm's answer.
It's a matter now of the word has gotten out what we're doing, and we have the non-for-profits waiting in line to be an endowment for the Norman Polsky Family Supporting Foundation within the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation, and they've given us terrific help, and we're expanding. We have 44. We're putting on another 4 this year, so we'll be at 48 endowments. And you've got a list in your packet there that tells you what all we're in. We're all over the country and all kinds of things in arts, education. The medical mission is one of ours. We have the criteria is like theater in the park is a new one coming on, and it's just things that are good, that are doing good for other people. Okay, that's what we try. Mainly, we're trying to help them start endowments and get other people to give them more endowments, because that's the way they're going to have a future. Be independently wealthy, so they can afford all these projects which they don't have money for.
For those of you that couldn't hear, Norm and Elaine are working on getting up to 48 endowments in this community and across the country. including Theater in the Park in Shawnee Mission Park, and they look for organizations that do good in the community. So that's a pretty wide range of wonderful organizations that they support. And they do try to do that through endowment funds that can be invested and therefore support those organizations over a long period of time. So hopefully they can become self-sufficient in the future. Well, thank you so much to our panelists tonight. It's been wonderful hearing each of your stories and each of your information. And for those of you in the audience, thank you also for attending. And before you leave tonight, don't get away without leaving me that green survey card. Hand it to an usher on your way out, please. And also have a cookie and some punch or coffee in the lobby, and our speakers will meet you out there. If you have other questions, they'd be happy to talk with you for a few minutes. Thanks again for coming to the Polsky series. We'll see you on June 4th.